Shalom and welcome to Temple Talk. Today, the 20th day of the month of Tammuz, 5776. It's July 26th, 2016. You're listening to Temple Talk from the Temple Institute in Jerusalem. Rabbi Richman here together with Yitzchak, Reuven. This Shabbat here in the land of Israel, we will be reading the penultimate Torah portion of the book of Numbers, Parshot Matot. And I think that in the diaspora you will be reading, dear listeners, Parshat Pinchas. This past Sunday, the 24th of July, we observed the Fast of Tammuz, deferred from Shabbat, the 17th of Tammuz, observed on the 18th of Tammuz. And before I forget, I must mention that this Shabbat is also Shabbat Mevarchim. It is the Sabbath of the blessing of the new moon of the month of Menachem Av, the Consoling Father, which will occur this next week on Friday, August 5th, in other words, Thursday night. August 4th is the beginning of the one-day new moon of the month of Av. Actually, Menachem Av is its name. The Consoling Father, because everything that happens is really in the best interest of the nation of Israel, in the best interest of the whole world. We believe that God has a plan, and it's up to us to fulfill our purpose in that plan as well. And now, we are in this period of time. It's called the straits, between the straits. That's S-T-R-A-I-T-S, the narrow places. Bein HaMitzarim is the day that our sages refer to this period of time, which is the period of mourning that begins with the Fast of Tammuz and increases in its intensity in the observances of national mourning until, of course, we reach the crescendo of this process, which is going to be the 9th of the month of Av, Menachem Av, the Consoling Father. That's going to also actually fall on Shabbat this year, and is going to be deferred to Sunday, August 14th. So this whole time period is about the Holy Temple. And if you are veteran listeners of Temple Talk and veteran followers of the exploits of the Temple Institute, then you probably know that we have a very particular attitude, a very particular perspective about this whole deal, this whole period of time. A very, very specific agenda, in fact, I would say we meaning the Temple Institute, but I think we represent a very growing and vocal section of Israeli society, very deeply rooted in faith, in Torah, in observance, in halakha, in integrity and devotion to Hashem. That's basically saying, okay, it's been like, 2,000 years, basically, almost, without the Holy Temple, and the majority of Jewry seems to think that the purpose of this period of time is just to wail, just to cry, just to mourn over the Holy Temple, as if the more we cry, the more something is going to give, and there's going to be some sort of cataclysmic development, some sort of divinely orchestrated change, and poof, the temple is going to be rebuilt. That's not at all what we believe. That's not our agenda. And as I say, we represent a healthy section of the nation of Israel, which is that we are supposed to do something about it. It's a commandment in the Torah to rebuild the Holy Temple. Our lives depending on it. The life of the world is depending on it. And no, the goal is not just the cycle of mourning itself and to show that we're sorry and to show that we're upset, but the goal is to rise up and rebuild. So first of all, I gotta tell you, as far as crying is concerned, as far as the world is concerned, the world really seems to be going to pot. I mean, the more you look around, the more you see something is so vastly wrong with the fabric of humanity and what has been allowed to happen, and how much you're even allowed to talk about it and criticize it without you being branded yourself the problem because you're not politically correct. I mean, there's been so many horrendous terror attacks in Europe the past week since our last broadcast. I can't even really remember all of them, including today, as we go to microphone, where a priest was beheaded, I believe, in a church in France. And I believe that ISIS has taken responsibility for that. So why should I harangue you about all the terrible things that happen in Israel that are being perpetrated by Islamic terrorists when we can look at what's going on in Europe as well? First of all, if the goal is for the nation of Israel to be miserable and to be convoluted and to be anxiety-ridden over the loss of the temple, well, honestly, I don't really see that. I don't see people walking around tearing their hair out and acting like there is no tomorrow and that they can't go on without the Holy Temple. I see people that are saying, okay, it's that time of year again. Let's do this now. That's what we do around this time of year. So even if it's about like showing some sort of show of temple, like Holy Temple Remembrance Day kind of thing.
Yeah,
I must tell you, I don't even see that. But of course, Yitzchak, my position, I think that this whole conundrum goes much deeper. I refer, of course, to an article, an op-ed that originally appeared in the Jerusalem Post under my authorship. Originally appeared on June 27th, 2013. Not too much has changed since then, and I believe you actually have reposted it today, in fact, on the Temple Institute's Facebook page.
Yes, sir.
Also, the subject of I believe it was a 2-part video lesson that we made some years ago, of which this article is a bare-bones synopsis, but basically I call that article The Cult of Tragedy. And in that article I spoke about the fact that the giveaway of this whole hamster wheel, you know what a hamster wheel is, right? A guy is like stuck in this wheel just going around and around and around and he can't get out. That wheel could be the wheel of mundane existence. It could be the wheel of rote. It could be the wheel of slavery to our job or to our mental state or to whatever power holds us captive, or it could be our own particular self-imposed hamster wheel. And that's my idea about Tammuz, and the giveaway is the name of the month itself. Because the fast of the 17th of Tammuz that begins this period of mourning is like the apex, as it were, of the month of Tammuz, which is the month in which the decrees began, which is the month which is a month of din, a month of harsh judgment, the month in which the spies were traversing the land of Israel all throughout that month. But the name Tammuz actually is associated with a pagan deity. And in that article I actually traced the whole story of that name and asked aloud the question, why would the sages of Israel, why would they approve of and allow a month to be known by its by the name of a pagan deity? And the interesting thing, of course, is the verse that we find in the book of Ezekiel, chapter 8 and verse 14, which refers to the women that were sitting at the entrance to the gate of the temple of Hashem, causing the Tammuz to cry. And the Tammuz there refers to a particular idol of this deity, and there is the question between the interpretation of Rashi versus that of Maimonides as to what it means, causing the Tammuz to cry. It's very, very interesting and very academic, but the long and the short of it is that the whole idea of Tammuz is about crying, and there was a crying that was associated with the ancient god of Tammuz. And as I stated in that article, that's the key to understanding the real tragedy of our time of Tammuz, which is that we are stuck in a hamster wheel of meaningless mourning. And don't attack me for saying meaningless mourning. A lot of people, devout people, good people, Torah-observant people, get very angry when I say these things, because they say, how could you talk that way, meaningless mourning? It's a mitzvah to mourn for the Holy Temple. Don't you have to show that you're sorry for it? Don't you have to show that you're in pain over the destruction of the temple?
We shouldn't mourn. We should just go about our business and never think about the Holy Temple.
God forbid, I never said that. But the problem is that for a long time now, for many people, the mourning for the Holy Temple has become the end rather than the means to the end. And I refuse to accept, as does my rabbi. This is not my own. I didn't invent this at all, right? I refuse to believe that the goal of the mourning process is that we should just mourn. The goal of it has to be that it should come to an end and that we should be motivated to arise and rebuild the Holy Temple. And herein lies the rub of the whole irony of what I refer to as the cult of tragedy, the cult of Tammuz, which is that it's so much easier to mourn than it is to do something about it. It becomes a comfort zone almost. It becomes something that we feel safe with. It becomes a time of tears, and we are able to be comfortable with that pain because it's the way it's the way it is. It's what we're used to, and it's much more threatening to think that we actually have to confront the forces within our own psyche, let alone the forces that are preventing us externally from rebuilding. And unfortunately, we've become, sorry, I gotta say it, lobotomized by the pagan mindset of the Tammuz tragedy. And all we do is, and okay, I shouldn't say all we do. Yeah, I'm gonna say all we do at this point. Nationally, it's all we do. There are pockets of resistance. Yes, there is the National Liberation Front of the Jewish mindset, which we represent, which we're trying to re-educate our generation with great success, thank God, I must say. A measurable success. But the idea is the masses prefer to weep over the tragedy of our lives because it's just so good, the self-pity. It's so comforting. So we do it every year. We look forward to it. And then when the 9th of Av is over, we go on with the rest of our summer vacation, guiltless, because we've done what we need to do to show that we care about the Holy Temple. And it doesn't do it. It doesn't do it for me. It doesn't do it for us because it's not real. The real thing is for us to say, this has got to stop. This mourning has got to stop. And all the people that point to God and say, you know, he'll tell us when he's ready. He'll tell us when it's time to rebuild the Holy Temple. Well, what if he did already? And you were like out to lunch? What if you were a zoned out avocado when he knocked at your door and gave you the Temple Mount on a silver platter? And you wasted these decades wallowing in acrimonious politicization, monstrous obsession with what will these people say, what will these people think, but we have to do it this way, but we have to accommodate these, so that now what we have is a situation where good Jews, some of whom I know very well, are banned from ascending the Temple Mount and branded as felonious for expressing themselves as Jews, where we are so concerned with appearing to be accommodating to Islam that we mow down Jewish rights on the Temple Mount. And then we go through this, I'm sorry, again, my opinion, charade of acting as if it's so important to us that we're actually going to mourn during these 3 weeks, the national period of mourning for the Holy Temple as required by Torah law. We're going to actually, now I'm not blaming the secular or the representative of the secular government who, on the one hand, persecute Jews for being Jews on the Temple Mount and don't allow them to be Jews on the Temple Mount, but yet identify with the loss of the Holy Temple and show respect to this mourning period. Actually, my accusation at this point is against the rabbinical establishment and those that could make a difference by pointing out to their students, their followers, their masses, that this is not the way it's supposed to be, that we're supposed to be doing something about it, that nothing is going to change unless we show more than just an interest and angst over the loss, but we make a statement that this is not the way it's supposed to be. This is not what God expects from us. And that's what the goal of this whole period of time is supposed to be as we move from the 17th of Tammuz to the new moon of Av, to the week in which the 9th of Av falls, to the eve of the 9th of Av, to the 9th of Av itself, which is this tremendous pathos-laden crescendo of every Jew sitting on the floor and conducting himself as a mourner who has lost, God forbid, a close relative. And then when it's all over, what? We just eat and go about our
Brush
business?
ourselves off.
That isn't what was supposed to be happening here, and it wasn't supposed to take this long either, to tell you the honest truth. And what happens if God already indicated to us that the time has come for us to demand a change? These are just some thoughts that I would like to share with you, that I have shared with you as we begin our broadcast, as we reflect upon the fact that this is 1,946 years from the destruction of the Second Temple, and yet 68 years from the establishment of the State of Israel, and 49 years from the liberation of Jerusalem. Hello. Okay, so now what? Now what exactly? Now what exactly? And if we walk away with one question, that's my question, now what? Now what? More of the same?
You know, as you just pointed out, for 1,950 years approximately, been out without the Holy Temple.
46.
And all that time that the Jews were in the diaspora, we hadn't returned to the land. Okay, there was mourning, and that was the most effective expression we could achieve, perhaps, of dealing with the loss of the Holy Temple. Although I must add that the people of Israel did not take the loss of the Holy Temple lying down, and there were many attempts early on in history and actually throughout the centuries to document it, and we have it documented on our website. Maybe we'll post it again on our Facebook page.
Precedents. There were actual historical attempts to rebuild the Holy Temple,
and there were apparently some times when the avodah, when the offerings were renewed for short periods of time over history. So it's not like for 1,500 years Jews have just been sitting with their hands folded, not doing a thing. But certainly in the modern era, it has become more so, that it's become very, very, I don't know, chic or hip or whatever, to just mourn and wallow in our loss. However, now we have a state. Now we have sovereignty. Now we are independent. Now we are building a nation. And we have it in our playbook to do something about it. And you mentioned before, Rabbi, the state of the world, the horrible state of the world.
To which, by the way, the Holy Temple is the answer.
Exactly.
If you're a believing Jew, the Torah repeats this message countless times, right? This is the place of peace. This is the place of prayer. This is the place of solace, of blessing, of Hasharat HaShechina. So, like, it's so clear. So, like, the world is literally falling apart, going to pot, destroying itself, and actually it has our name on it.
So get off the synagogue floor, brush yourselves off, and roll up your sleeves and get to work.
And you made it so clear. You said you articulated what I was trying to say. Because I don't want to show disrespect, God forbid, to countless generations that mourn for the Holy Temple, which is basically the duty of every Jew. But what is the mourning process designed to impart? That's the question. Actually, the process of mourning for the Holy Temple cannot honestly and healthily be compared to mourning for an individual or a family member. You know why? Because the mourning process for an individual is a cathartic device that was designed by Torah for us to have closure. Because you're not going to see this person again now until God brings about the resurrection. But the mourning for the Holy Temple it's not equal, because the Holy Temple is a commandment in the Torah, like wearing tzitzit or like keeping Shabbat. So what do you mean? What, there's going to be some mystical transformation that has to do with the end of days? We're expected to be building the Holy Temple. That's why it's a positive commandment, as the Rambam says. It's a positive commandment to rebuild the Holy Temple, ready to bring the offerings there, celebrating this 3 times a year, etc., etc. The first entrance in the laws of Beit HaBechira. So here's the thing that you said so clearly. You know, mourning for the Holy Temple throughout history, that was really all we could do in many periods of Jewish history, and it was a noble thing to do, and it was the right thing to do. And here's what I want to say, and you know, people are gonna just really throw eggs and tomatoes at me in the street when they see me for saying this. But here is the idea. That same morning that we did in the ghetto of Lodz, or in Siberia, or in Yemen, or wherever it was, are you listening? Is no longer honest. It is not an honest statement to sit on the floor and to say the same kinot, the same dirges for the Holy Temple, and cry and look up to heaven and say, when will you come back to us? Because he did. It would be more honest to say, hello, I gave at the office, I'm not interested. I'm just not interested. Admit that you're not interested, but don't say, when will you return to us? He did. Right? That's all the miracles of our generation. So this is the whole point. It's simply not honest to act as if nothing has happened. We've been here for 68 years. We've been in Jerusalem for 49 years. We've had the Temple Mount, theoretically, legendarily, for 49 years. So sitting outside on the floor and saying, what's gonna give over here, Master of the Universe, this is terrible, I'm so sad, it's simply a historical lie.
You know, the Prime Minister of France, Emmanuel Valls, is in the news because he just vowed to Israel that France would never ever forget the historic connection between the Jewish nation and the Temple Mount. This is referring to the UNESCO vote, attempting to make a statement that there is no Jewish connection to the Temple Mount. And if Emmanuel Valls can make such a statement, whether I believe it or not is something else, but where are we? You know, how do we make that statement? By lying on the floor and crying that...
And this is the whole problem about this schizophrenic, you know, animal that we are. Which is it? Which is it? Is the Temple Mount in our hands? Is this the holiest thing in the world to us? Is this the symbol of the Jewish people for all time? Or not? And because, like that verse in Isaiah, your destroyers come from within you. Every act that seeks to distance the Jewish people from its heritage and from the Temple Mount, it all starts here, and especially, if you'll pardon me, with this current government that has done so much to erode the Jewish connection to the Temple Mount. But the whole purpose of this time period is to inspire us to draw this time to a close and to get up and rebuild, and that is our goal. God willing, stay with us. Temple Talk.
Shalom and welcome back to Temple Talk. This is Yitzchak Reuven here in the studio with Rabbi Richman, Temple Institute here in Jerusalem. Today is the 20th day of the month of Tammuz, 5776, the 26th of July, 2016. This Shabbat is Parshat Matot, the second to last Parsha of Sefer Bamidbar, of the Book of Numbers. And I believe in another week, actually, the diaspora and here in the land of Israel will be at last on the same page again, or on the same parsha in terms of the reading, because I think that next week there'll be a double parsha read outside.
Exactly, on August 6th.
Of Israel, right.
In the diaspora, they will be reading the twin parshiot of Matot Masai. They'll make it into twins, that is. So we will all be on the same
and
page.
That's that sort of discrepancy that's really been occurring throughout the entire book of Numbers,
right,
will finally come to a conclusion.
Well, I'll be reading the first portion of the book of Deuteronomy on the 9th of Av, deferred, of course, on Shabbat Chazon, which is August 13th.
And next Shabbat also is Shabbat Mavarchin, where we bless the coming new month of Av, Menachem Av, which will be the following Thursday.
Yes, this Shabbat is Shabbat Mavarchin.
This Shabbat, yes.
Right.
And we're in the 3 weeks. We've been talking about that, the 3 weeks, Bein HaMitzarim, between the straits, the 3 weeks of mourning and a reflection concerning the state of the Holy Temple, which is a state of destruction for the past 1,940 some years.
And you know what? If the temple is a reflection of the world, well, goodness, look around at the world today.
Yeah.
Is there anybody that could disagree or say that we're looking for an argument by pointing out that the world is really, really just spiraling downward giving into horrible forces?
It's like a meltdown, and even the Europeans now are saying, "Oh, this was ISIS. This was Islamic." They're losing their ability to deny the reality, which is bursting, breaking their doors down. But again, it's 3 weeks, and you've been hearing us do our 3-week thing. But as
actually,
anybody,
we do it all year round.
Yeah, you mentioned before, Rabbi, any veteran listeners to Temple Talk know that this is what we do during the 3 weeks. But veteran listeners to Temple Talk and followers of the Temple Institute and followers of what's happening with the Temple Mount and the Holy Temple also know that the 3 weeks is always a period when we have something to share, and we unveil a surprise with the purpose of changing people's mindsets, changing the way people perceive not just the 3 weeks, but perceive our responsibility in the world and our responsibility toward the Holy Temple.
Change your way of thinking about the Holy Temple altogether. And in the past, we have actually produced a wonderful series, The Children Are Ready, 1, 2, and 3, which all focus on a device to get people to think differently about how we view mourning for the Holy Temple and how we view the rebuilding of the Holy Temple.
How we view our responsibility, and just to be able to remove for a moment all the baggage that we've inherited, which keeps us on the floor.
Which keeps us in the hamster wheel.
And keeps us in a hamster wheel. This year, we also have a video which we'll be sharing during the 3 weeks. We also...
Don't say too much now, Yitzchak.
Don't say too much?
Tell the people to keep their eyes peeled somewhere between August 4th and August 7th. Hopefully closer to Thursday, August 4th, we will be unveiling a new video, which we will very much appreciate our listeners helping to go viral, which will be our latest statement on this whole conundrum, everything that we're talking about, the idea of what will it take to understand that the cycle of mourning for the Holy Temple and the things that we do, as sincere as they are and as heartfelt as they are, to mark the fact that we grieve over the destruction of the temple, but how will that ever change without a change of heart? That's what this video, which I must admit is beautiful, well done, extremely well done, I hope you'll say. That's what it's all about.
Now, that video is a statement, and is an attempt to lodge people from their inertia. However, anybody who's familiar with our work knows that over the past few years we've also introduced campaigns during the 3 weeks, which are actual campaigns in order to create real change.
But actually campaigns to draw attention to the fact that we are not sitting idly by. I mentioned earlier that I can say honestly, truthfully, that the Temple Institute in the 30 years, just about 29, that it has existed, has really proven that things can change, and thank God we have serious success to report. This whole generation, the whole attitude that vast swaths of the Jewish people have about the Temple Mount and its centrality and its importance, ranging from soldiers to yeshiva students to secular professors to members of the government, the whole change in awareness, the whole paradigm shift of consciousness about the Temple Mount is all really thanks to the Temple Consciousness Revolution that was begun by the Temple Institute. And this has been carried over to a whole new generation. And now that the Temple Institute has really met with a tremendous amount of success in promoting the agenda of preparing for the rebuilding of the Holy Temple by promoting those aspects of the building and its details that can be done, the next question that arises is pretty obvious, which is, who is going to be responsible for the Holy Temple? Who is going to bring about the change? Who are the stewards of the Jewish people, and really, by proxy, all of humanity? Who is responsible for bringing divine blessing into the world? And what is the answer to that question, Yitzchak?
Well, from what I remember from my Sunday school, the people who ran the service in the Holy Temple were the Kohanim. Yeah?
That is correct. The lineal descendants of Aaron. I wouldn't call it running the service as much as I would call it bringing divine blessing into the world. And a very bold initiative of the Temple Institute that was begun several years ago was the Nezer HaKodesh Institute for Kohanic Studies. And that group of students studying in earnest, those Kohanim, young men of priestly descent, studying in earnest their obligations towards the Jewish people in the world in serving in the temple, that bore fruit already in the many temple exercises that have been held publicly over the past couple of years here in Jerusalem that have turned society on its head, really, by bringing such attention to the Holy Temple. There have been the Passover offering drills, the first fruits, the showbread, the production of olive oil and purity for the first time, the lighting of the menorah, the Tamid. All of these projects have been peopled by and fueled by the Kohanim of this academy, and fueled by the research of the scholars of the Temple Institute's basically school for Kohanim. And very soon, in fact, I believe, God willing, this week, please follow it on Facebook and on the Temple Institute's website. We are going to be unveiling a campaign for support for the Temple Institute's Nezer HaKodesh Academy Institute of Kohanic Studies.
Not merely support to continue it, but to really kickstart it and bring it to a whole new level of outreach and productivity.
And it's basically twofold. It's calling on all Kohanim to become involved, and it's calling on the world to become involved, because this is, as far as Torah is concerned, as far as God's statements through the prophets of Israel is concerned, this is the answer to what's going on in the world today. The bringing about of the resting of the divine presence in the Holy Temple in Jerusalem. And it's the obvious and clear and natural next stage of the agenda of the Temple Institute, is to prepare the people that will be serving in the Holy Temple. So this is groundbreaking and big news.
By preparing and removing the, quote, obstacles that stand in the way between reality today and reality with the Holy Temple, that is by drawing up actual construction plans, architectural plans, which we've done. And that is by recreating the vessels to be used in the Holy Temple, which we've done. And now by training Kohanim to lead the service and to bring blessing into the world, we are basically stripping the people of Israel, the government of Israel, and the nations of the world of the excuse of, but how would we do it? You know, how do you do these things? How do you make it? How do you run it?
But aren't we all impure? Oh, I forgot to mention to our loyal listeners that you and I are making a trip on Thursday this week to check out some of our red heifers in a secret location here in Israel, and to look at the progress of that program, which we began this time last year, to raise our own herd of red heifers here in Israel, so that ultimately, maybe not in this generation of these cows, but soon we will have the proper candidates for the restoration of biblical purity, the ashes of the red heifer. So None of this should be keeping you up at night because we got it all covered, but we do need you to join us.
Right, and there's no excuses. Again, you can't scratch your head and say, well, you know, how would you do it? Because we're working on it and we're figuring it out. And actually, it's very clear. The Torah makes it very clear. Our sages, our tradition has never lost the knowledge of how these things are done, how the vessels are made, how to prepare for a red heifer, how to prepare for the Holy Temple. It's all there. We have the knowledge, and that's what we are bringing back to life today in our generation. And again, we are kindling the spirit of the people, and when we reach that critical mass, the people will go to the leaders of Israel, the leaders of all the countries of the world, and say, what are you doing? Now's the time. You know, this is the answer. And that goes to the subject of responsibility of leadership. And I think that
reminds me of the beginning of this week's Torah.
I was going to say, yeah, that's something that Parshat Matot deals with.
Because the beginning, it talks about complex laws of vows. And this is a section of the Torah that Moshe communicated directly, not to the people, but to the leaders of every tribe. And there's a lot that our sages have to say about that. Make a long story short, one thing it definitely has to do with is about the value of the word and keeping the word and the power of the word, of a spoken word. For those people that still have a question about why some people are obsessed with the Holy Temple, again, as I think we tried to make clear, I don't think you have to do much more than look out your window and just see what's going on in the world today. It's humanity run amok. It's the unraveling of the divine image in which we've been created. It's the installment of the spirit of Amalek as king. And that is just on some sort of override right now. And that's what is at stake now. It's really what's at stake. Sounds serious, and it is serious. Like I said, can't even keep up with what's going on anymore. We're not a news program, so I don't have to summarize and report to you every atrocity that's been committed in the past couple of days, but I hope you're keeping up with it.
Because
it is our responsibility to stand up against it, because it's our responsibility to reclaim humanity, because it's our responsibility to stand up for the honor of Hashem and for the divine image in which all humanity was created in. And instead of just sitting and crying the God of Tammuz, we have to do something about it.
Like I said before, we have it in our playbook. It's not something that we have to come up with. We have it, and we are preparing for it, and it has to be, the change in the world has to come from the people of the world. And hopefully a lot of hearts are turning toward our Father in heaven. And the best way, the only way, the real way to manifest that connection and to channel that prayer for redemption is through the Holy Temple.
And as another proof to the great success and progress that is being made in the face of this generation through the efforts of the Temple Institute, let me point out, Yitzchak, that on the 29th of Tammuz, which will correspond to the 4th of August, Thursday, August 4th, here in Jerusalem, there is going to be a inauguration of a movement called Youth for the Holy Temple. And they're going to have a convention, a conference, which is going to be the official, how do you say Kenesei Yesod? Official inaugurational meeting of this group called Noar HaMikdash, Youth for the Holy Temple. It's going to be a march, actually, that's going to begin in Zion Square in Jerusalem in the afternoon, and it's going to walk towards the old city, and it's going to have the participants are going to engage in a prayer for the Holy Temple. Opposite the site of the Holy Temple, they're going to have a meeting. It's going to be addressed by Rabbi Dov Lior, former Grand Chief Rabbi of Hebron, Rabbi Yisrael Ariel, founder of the Temple Institute, a number of prominent people, including some members of Knesset, are going to speak to this group. Again, a pretty clear recognition and acknowledgement of the fact that the people of Israel are healthy, waking up. The youth of Israel are bothering to make a statement, and instead of just playing Pokemon Go, whatever that thing is called, they're actually saying, came to Rabbi Arel, came to the Temple and said, please guide us and help us to make a movement wherein we can participate and support and be part of the process of the rebuilding of the Holy Temple. And that is just such a beautiful and sustaining and inspiring thought about where the people of Israel are going.
And I think that's a beautiful illustration of what we've been trying to get across in today's show, and what we've been trying to get across every year for the past who knows how many years during this time period, that we're not saying, stop mourning, it's not, it's meaningless, or stop mourning, it's spineless. We're saying transform that energy, transform that concern, transform that desire into action for change. And that exactly is what this march is all about. Again, you know
Psalms
what?
30. Once again, Mizmor Chanukat Habayit LeDavid, the most beautiful psalm, Psalm 30, which is the psalm that was written by David for the inauguration of the Holy Temple. Look at that verse. Hafachta mispadi lemacholi. You have changed my mourning into dance. And that's the whole process of what is supposed to be happening here.
And standing as a body opposite the Temple Mounts and praying for change and praying for the strength and the initiative to build a Holy Temple is a transformation of sitting on the synagogue floor and mourning the fact that there is no Holy Temple. That is the transformation that we have been trying to achieve, and thank God we are seeing it manifesting itself before our very eyes.
This week's Torah portion also features the idea of the 2.5 tribes that came to Moshe and said, could we please stay here on this side of the Jordan? And it's very disturbing. I've always found it very perplexing, the whole idea of what they said, and how they arranged their priorities, and Moshe's reaction, which seems to be kind of disproportionate, how angry he was comparing them to the spies and everything. So, God willing, in this week's video lesson, we're going to go a little deeper into that whole idea of what was really going on there, amongst other things, of course. A timely lesson, since a lot of diaspora Jewry also choose to stay on the other side of the Jordan. Is there a message there?
Hey, different set of priorities, which you're going to discuss, I assume, in this week's Parsha video.
Yeah.
So, you can't argue a different set of priorities. However, it's very encouraging. Large numbers of Jews from the United States, as well as France and other countries, are making their way to Israel. And
you know what? Watching either the Republican National Convention or the Democratic National Convention should be enough to get any Jew to want to get the heck out of there. I would hope.
I'd want to get out of there before, November 8th or something, when there are elections. It might be too late then.
God forbid.
Who you want to vote for, it might be too late. So
vote for Israel and vote with your legs and start over again and come here and
we'll build a beautiful holy temple together.
Yes, and show Hashem that you believe him when he said that this is the land that he brought us to. Show Hashem that you believe that this was what was meant all along for the Jewish people.
Come over to this side of the Jordan and be part of what's happening, be part of the positive change that is going to pull the world out of its spiraling
plummet into the bottomless pit of destruction and immolation that we actually see happening all around us right now. This is not exaggeration. This isn't a dream anymore. It's the real thing.
So lose the Tammuz conundrum. Stop weeping for weeping's sake, and get up on your feet, and together we can march into the future and make a change, because you know what? Look at the world again. We keep saying it, but argue
Instead
with
of
it.
just
Look at the
saying,
world.
like people
Does it-
say
if
to
it
each other, they say,
needs change.
people say, may this be like the last time we ever have to fast. Or maybe people
might
say,
be.
people say, maybe we not have to fast this year. Well, do something about it. If you want to not fast, if you want to see a change, do something about it.
And you know what? The way things are going, it might be the last time, whether you do something about it or not. So you might as well do something about it, and do what we're expected to do, and do what we know we need to do. And that is rebuild the Holy Temple. Thank you for being with us on Temple Talk. We will be back next week. Temple Talk.